You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello. Welcome to the live stream. We always wait just a moment for everyone to refresh their app or whatever it is that they are doing to watch the program. Sometimes it takes a moment to lock on to the live stream. If you are, before we get started, for those of you watching the live stream way, and the reason for that is I have an injury on my forehead, somewhere right there. And, anytime you have an injury to your forehead or your face, your choices are bad and worse, right? You can leave it there and everybody looks at you and says, oh, my God, what did you do to your head? Or you can put a Band-Aid on it and everybody looks at you and says, oh, my God, what did you do to your head? So either way, it's no good. So what I did was I came up with this idea of putting this cap on. Because a lot of times the live stream gets segmented out into clips and things like that. So anyway, we're going to start the podcast. Thank you very much for checking in with us today. And we're rolling right here in just a few minutes, or seconds. Here we go. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, the Billy Dees podcast is primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Now, on Thursday nights, we go live on, what do we go live on? We go live on X. X is the big one, and also on Facebook. You can check out the Billy Dees Twitter page, which is now X, at Billy Dees. And the Facebook page is Billy Dees Podcast. You can check us out. Always, the podcasts are always available on all the major platforms. That is where 99.99% of all the listens come from. We have a nearly 10-year history in this current form of the Billy Dees Podcast with this podcast. So we've been around a while. We're going to talk about a number of different things today. And the title of this episode is, do the pyramids provide insights into JFK? Probably not. Now, obviously, that is sarcastic, and but there's news about JFK and there's news about the pyramids. We're going to cover that. And I also want to talk a little bit about what's going on with Tesla and, of course, Elon Musk. So let's start there. Tesla, as you know, is an electric car company. And I believe Tesla and Ford are the only two major American car companies that have not taken government money. And until recently, Tesla, had this mystique. Elon did not do any advertising, still does not do any advertising. He was the kind of catalyst that raised awareness to what Tesla was doing. And recently he has gotten involved with politics, and he has gotten involved with the whole Doge movement, the Department of Government Efficiency, and has been very closely tied into the campaign and then the presidency of Donald Trump. Now, since this has happened, the stock prices have fluctuated, and there's been any number of things going on. I happen to believe, I am not a stock expert. The stock market in general, a lot of the stocks that have been very reliable have been fluctuating. That's just a nature of the business every once in a while if you're into stocks. So a lot of the stocks have been going up and down. There's been some issues with stability. Some could argue that the tariffs are playing a role in this. I can tell you the one thing the stock market does not like is uncertainty. I've said this before. If you're going to go into a situation as far as the stock market is concerned, better off it be bad with its parameters clearly defined, as opposed to going in with uncertainty. The stock market doesn't like that. From what I've been able to research here, his stock has come down pretty significantly, but I have a feeling that this is not your typical company. Can't predict the future, but there's a number of things to consider here. Tesla is probably one of the most innovative car companies in the world. And I'm not necessarily defending them for any particular reason, for any political reason, but just so that this whole thing about the stock market and what's happening to Tesla is in the proper perspective. They are one of the most innovative car companies out there. The self-driving, or what is called SFD, is pretty impressive. And the more it gets used, the more data that this system accumulates, the better it gets. The solar roofs are pretty cool. They have a power wall, which is a system that stores mostly for homes, from what I understand, solar energy into batteries. The megapacks are something that they're developing to help the power grid out. So it's kind of like, I don't know if this is a proper analogy either, but it's kind of like a power interruption backup system that you might have in your home for your computer or something like that. The supercharger network is pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. And coming up, the cyber taxi and some of the other stuff, this is a company that has a lot going for it. And of course, the Optimus is something that, if you've seen videos of that, I'm not sure if it's impressive or if it's scary. But this is a company that, in terms of battery technology and a lot of other things, the charging stations, this company has a lot of infrastructure. So I would not be in a hurry to count out Tesla anytime soon. Now, that's kind of just the overview here of a practical analysis of what's happening with the stock with Tesla. I would, if you were an Elon Musk fan and you are a Tesla fan, I don't believe there's something to panic over yet. Okay, but with that being said, I do believe what's happening with the quote unquote demonstrations. I just love that word. Demonstrations. How many times have we heard the word demonstrations? And what they really are riots. I'm going to play you this clip right now. Elon Musk talking about some of the things that have been happening around him and his companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's really come as quite a shock to me that there is this level of really hatred and violence from the left. I always thought the left, or Democrats, were supposed to be the party of empathy, the party of caring, and yet they're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're firing bullets into the dealerships, they're just smashing up Teslas. Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged. There's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
All right, you can hear the frustration in his voice there, and I'm with him on this. Here again, I try to tell the audience, take the political leanings that I may or may not have out of the equation. Let's just kind of analyze this a little bit. I know a lot of people on the left have brought up, well, what about January 6th? What about January 6th? All right. Well, that sucked too. There was nothing good about it. But it was a different kind of bad. Private individuals were not targeted. Private property was not targeted. Cars were not burned. And the left has a history of burning good portions of the cities down. Okay, so this is a little different. It's one thing if Elon Musk got involved in politics, and which he has. And because of the fact that he's gotten involved in politics, people just don't buy his cars anymore. I believe, I can't say for certain, I certainly can't speak for him. I haven't heard him necessarily speak about that specifically. But that is something that is a risk that you take when you enter the political fray, especially in these times when everyone is so polarized. And I'm sure that he knows that. When you get involved in politics these days, whether you are on the right or you are on the left, if you are in the entertainment industry, if you are in the business of selling things, there's a chance that people out there are going to say, I don't like you anymore, and I'm not going to buy your shit. It's that simple. But this is beyond that. Okay, this is, I've heard it described as domestic terrorism. This is, burning property, throwing firebombs into dealerships, firing shots into dealerships, threatening the lives of Elon Musk and his family members. And as also, I just found out, too, that there has been, I understand it was taken down, but there was a list of Tesla owners and their addresses and so on and so forth made public. And from what I understand, that was taken down. But just the fact that somebody put that out there, what this is beyond saying, I don't want to buy your car anymore. This is saying that you don't dare buy this person's car, you're going to pay. That is terrorism. That is extortion. All right. And this is the type of thing that we cannot have in the society. And if Elon Musk was supporting Kamala Harris, I would not be happy. All right. But I wouldn't be advocating for his property and the private individuals to be threatened. You got to keep in mind that people that buy cars, unless you're super rich, like Elon, unless you're super rich, there's two major expenditures that most average everyday people have, pretty much in any economic strata. And that is a house and a car. Those two things are big purchases for most people. Even if they're moderate expenses, even if you're upper middle class, it's still a big expense. And when you target one of these cars and you key it, or you set fire to it. There's a video somewhere of some creep putting his hand in his pants, running his hand through his ass, and smearing that on the window. If you are doing stuff like that, you're hurting a private individual who made a decision to buy an expensive product. It was probably a big decision. I know when I buy a car, I'm a nervous wreck. I bought one last year. I was a nervous wreck the night before picking it up. Because it's something that you buy. It's a huge expense, and it's something that you're going to have to live with for a couple of years at least. And that can be a long time when you not happy with the car after you bought it for whatever reason. So these are the people that these people on the left are targeting. They're not just hurting, a billionaire. They're hurting average folks. And I really don't like the fact that people who might be interested in buying a Tesla are afraid to buy one. I talked about free speech on the last episode and probably many others. It's one of my favorite topics. And what I say is that free speech, we forget, is really about listening. When someone gets silenced by someone who don't think that person should be able to speak, they're not just silencing that person. What they are doing is they are making the decision for other people that you don't need to listen to this person. Okay, the people who want to listen to this individual have their right to listen, have their right to get that information, to get that perspective. They have that right taken away from them. And here again, getting back to the free market and free enterprise. If someone comes out with a political position, they got a big company and it damages their brand, that's on them. Like I've often said, you have no rights in the court of public opinion. But when someone starts to threaten you, starts to make the ownership of a certain brand of car a liability, a safety issue, they are making the decision for you that you don't need to buy this. This isn't something, even though you want it, that you should buy. Somebody is making that decision for you. And that's what I really do not like. You know, and interesting, that is often the case. And I suppose that both sides are guilty of this, although I'm going to say that the left is worse. As far as I know, there's been very little Democratic condemnation of what's been going on with Tesla. Very few Democrats have come out and said, hey, you know, you may not like Elon Musk, you may not like President Trump, and if you don't want to buy their products, you know, that's fine, that's your decision, but you shouldn't be intimidating other citizens. But none of that. We don't get that. And as a matter of fact, you know, I've talked before about these late night talk shows. They're all they're all pretty much the same. They have the same humor. Jimmy Kimmel in particular is somebody who really gets under my skin. All of these guys that are on these late night talk shows are trying to resurrect. They're holding a seance and they're trying to resurrect Johnny Carson. And that's just not going to happen. For one thing, Johnny was unique. He had a personality that came across a certain way. And oddly enough, Johnny Carson said on many occasions that we shouldn't, you know, he did political parodies and humor and stuff, just, you know, fine. But he did not do mean-spirited humor, and he did not, quote-unquote, take a side. And he was asked about that. He was asked about that one time by Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes. His question was basically, you get criticized a lot because you have this huge forum. Why don't you take a stand on some issues? And Johnny's answer was, I feel that mixing entertainment, mixing the emotion that entertainment gives you with pushing an agenda of some kind is a very dangerous combination. And he was right. Now, the thing is with these guys, I don't even find them entertaining. So they're past the pale on that. Another thing that Johnny Carson said as an entertainer is likability is 90% of the game. And these late night shows are dropping in ratings. Some of them have a disdain. And Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel are two that I personally cannot stand. I absolutely cannot stand. I noticed a clip of Jimmy Kimmel talking about this vandalism with Elon Musk and Tesla and all this, and he was really coy. I don't have the exact quote here, but it was something like, yeah, the stock is down, and the audience claps, and he goes, and the vandalism, you shouldn't be vandalizing the cars. Don't do that. And he you know, it was very, you know, quite frankly, if I was him, I would hope that nobody gets hurt. You know, making light of these situations and that little tongue-in-cheek and that little, what I perceive to be very mean sarcasm there. I would hope that nobody, especially a child or something like that, gets killed in one of these fire bombings, or maimed, or disfigured, or scarred for life. And having this tongue-in-cheek attitude leading up to this vandalism is very disturbing to me. I don't believe there's anything funny about that. There's nothing funny about that at all. So anyway, that's my take on that. If you are an Elon fan, don't panic. Like I said, it's a very innovative company there. Not to mention SpaceX and all these other things. Fantastic success this week with bringing down the astronauts that were caught up on the International Space Station for I don't know how many months. And they were brought back. They've had some issues, from what I understand, although not serious at this time, adjusting to gravity because they were weightless for so long. And that can produce some crazy effects on you. So, you know, they're recovering, but from what I understand, they are doing okay. And we're very happy about that. Okay. JFK, that's the other big topic. The JFK files were released. And of course, this is in regard to what happened down in Dallas in 1963. And I made a prediction prior to these files being released. And my prediction was basically if there's something really monstrous, something really earth-shaking in these files, I am going to be very surprised. Now, there's pages and pages of documents. I don't know how many books it amounts to. There's a lot to sift through here. To my knowledge, nothing earth-shaking has come out. There, and just as I predicted as well, these files have spawned. They have spawned more conspiracy theories. It's kind of like one of those things, you go to kill the spider and you hit the spider and 50 million little ones run out. That's what happened with these JFK files. It didn't squelch the conspiracies. It just produced. Now we got thousands of them that are running around. Ruby knew this, and Oswald knew that, and the KGB knew about Oswald, and Okay, here's the thing. Carl Sagan, one of my favorite scientists and commentators, he said this, and I don't know if this was originally his quote, but I heard him say it enough times, and I've always respected it, and I've always reflected on it. And that is, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so far, there isn't extraordinary evidence here. But we'll see. There's still a lot to sift through. I said the same thing, incidentally, about the Epstein list, and everybody's talking about the Diddy list now. I'm skeptical. Typically what happens, if something earth-shaking is going to come out of these things, it usually happens very quickly. Okay? And this isn't happening. Diddy, I can't say for sure, but my gut tells me he's already turned state's evidence, which means that's going to get muddy real quick. I know everybody's anticipating this big list because they've all decided that they hate certain figures in Hollywood, and I can understand why. Okay, old Hollywood, like in the Metro Goldwyn Mayer days, they didn't allow their stars too much freedom to be public. They were at galas and orchestrated events. But for one thing, they didn't want them showing up on TV for a lot of reasons because it took away from their screen presence. And the other reason is, and it's pretty obvious, is that most of these actors and actresses are dumb as hell. And the studios did not want the illusion. These people who seemed larger than life on the big screen, they didn't want the illusion that these were special people that towered over the audience and were loaded with talent. They didn't want that illusion to be destroyed by them going on TV and running their mouths. And you didn't see big stars back then selling cars in commercials and all this other stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it destroys it. It takes something away. Tom Cruise, to his credit, I've never seen him selling a car on TV. And he's real good at keeping that image of a movie star. And these people, especially post-COVID, the image of celebrity culture has really eroded. Hollywood is not doing that well. I kind of feel it's a number of different reasons. It's the fact that streaming was overinvested in way too early, and some real bad decisions were done there. Obviously, getting people back into the theaters after COVID, was an issue. You got these actors now. Most of them are some type of political figures as much as they are actors. They just simply cannot avoid keeping their mouths shut. And quite frankly, you have the smartphones. When COVID was going on, people spent a lot of time on TikTok and all this other kind of crap. And, if you are of a certain age, you're much more likely to know who Logan Paul is than Denzel Washington. It's that simple. So you have these people now that have turned on celebrity culture, and they're really hoping that the people that they hate is going to show up on one of these lists. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to be really surprised if a big star comes out of this Epstein or Diddy thing. I'm going to be really surprised. Not to say that it's impossible, but I doubt that it's going to happen. Getting back to JFK, like I said, earth-shaking stuff usually drops pretty quickly. And this has been 60 years. And I noticed this years ago when I was in grade school. I noticed that the more complicated something is, the less likely that it is. I made that observation when I was in high school. And a lot of people now refer to that as Occam's razor, which basically says if you have two competing theories, the simpler explanation is the one that is most likely. And the amount of people that would have had to have been involved with the assassination attempt or what did happen back in Dallas in 1963, especially when you got to remember that the Dallas police were largely in charge of that investigation. And see, that doesn't happen these days. The laws were changed largely after what happened down in Dallas. The Dallas police had a lot of investigative authority in what was happening down there. They were thrown into a situation, quite frankly, where they were in over their heads. And the idea that all these people somehow had all this massive evidence, the Dallas police, all the people in the Secret Service, all the people in the CIA, FBI, and all this other stuff had this burning hot evidence that there was something major about that event. And they kept their mouth shut or somehow kept it sealed for 60 years is very unlikely. Now, it's not to say impossible, but it's unlikely. And, interestingly, too, the idea that someone who just made an attempt or was accused of shooting at a president was thrown out in front of the press for a press conference, actually taking someone who is a key suspect in a presidential assassination and throwing them in front of the press to answer questions. That would be unheard of today. But they did it back then. There's that tape of Oswald talking to the press. So that's how poorly this was handled. It was very ragtag, very poorly handled. And the idea that this event being as scattered as it was and as poorly handled as it was going to contain all these secrets is a stretch to me. And I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me and say, oh, no, Bill, you can't tell me this. You can't tell me that. They say the same thing. There's conspiracy theories now that John Wilkes Booth lived into the 1900s. He lived to be an old person. And that was the assassin of Lincoln. And conspiracy theories, the earth being flat. Have you ever tried to argue with somebody that thinks the world is flat? There's nothing you can say to them, nothing that is going to change their mind. Absolutely nothing. And I've talked to conspiracy theorists about 9/11. All right. And there's nothing you can say in terms of it doesn't work that way. That's not how buildings fall. These things were constructed a certain way. That's why they fell the way they did. But doesn't mean a thing. Okay. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If you are going to make the claim that aliens exist, if you are going to make the claim that any number or some specific individual was involved in what happened with JFK, you need extraordinary evidence. There's always going to be, when you have agencies, foreign and domestic, the KGB following Oswald, you have underworld figures like Ruby. And you have somebody like Oswald who, went through military training, ended up in Russia, and that was at the height of what was going on with the Cold War. Naturally, he's on everybody's radar, okay? And a lot of these things intersect. They overlap a little bit. Those were busy, crazy times. But to just say, okay, well, these two people came together, so there had to be something going on, and you can't tell me otherwise. There has to be something extraordinary. And so far, I'm not getting extraordinary stuff. So for the time being, we know that Oswald was a goof. How he obtained the gun and everything is well known, and this has been, investigated by numerous countries. And the movies always, getting back to the movies again, way too many people put their impressions of life events that are drawn from movies. I've noticed that a lot. And I'll be talking to somebody about something, and they'll say, well, did you see this movie? And in that movie, they showed that, the space, the moon landing was fake, and they showed everything how they did it. Okay. It was a movie. Okay. It was people who were pretending to be someone else, saying lines that were written by someone else, being directed by someone else. Okay. They are works of fiction. All right. And they spark your imagination. They are designed to tap into your what if part of your brain and exploit that for entertainment purposes. That's it. Oswald was a goof. We know that for sure. And I can't go through a whole litany of stuff here. The path of the bullet is often misrepresented because they always show everybody in the car sitting straight, looking forward, and that's not how they were seated when the bullets arrived. So somebody goes, they turned right, then left, right, then left, from the movie RFK. No, they weren't sitting in rigid positions looking straight forward. And I don't want to get graphic here. I'm not going to get graphic about brains and all that stuff, but bullets hitting people. My dad was a veteran, and he was an expert rifleman, really, really good. I don't know that he got that way necessarily from the service, but like a lot of things, he pushed me to play football, and he pushed me to get involved with guns. And I was better at guns than I was football. I liked handguns a little better. I liked the immediate knowledge of hitting the target. With a rifle, sometimes you're not sure what you've hit until you look through a telescope and all this stuff. My dad could hit anything. I mean, he knew how to account for drops and all that stuff. And he and I discussed the JFK assassination, and he made it very clear that was not a difficult shot. It wasn't a difficult shot for a lot of reasons. It was, first of all, it was a downward trajectory, which really takes drop out of the bullet. When you're shooting up, that is much more difficult. Hence the expression, make sure you get the high ground. That's why that is. That's why the high ground is so important. It's much better to be on a peak than it is in a valley if you are going to get into a firefight. And the other thing is that the target in this case, the car, was moving away from Oswald. They always say, well, it was a moving target. True, but it was moving away from Oswald. And the thing is that a target that is moving away gets smaller, but it still basically stays in the sights. When you are shooting at something that's moving left to right, the sight only lines up with the target for a split second. So the shot is much more difficult to plan. So this was something that was a downward trajectory on a target that really was not moving left to right in terms of his angle, and is a relatively short distance. Oswald was a trained marksman. This was not something that required 10 people to pull off. And the last thing I would say about that is, I know people say that they heard shots coming from different directions. Getting back to 9/11, same thing. There was bangs coming from everywhere. Explosions were everywhere. The fact of the matter is, when you get people who are not used to being in combat situations, especially in an urban environment where you have a lot of cement roads, you have glass buildings, you have brick buildings, there's reflective sound all over the place. And it's very hard for police officers to sift through what's true and what isn't. It's very, very difficult. So, like I said, you can never say never. Crazy things happen in this world. And as it stands right now, I'm still going to say Oswald did it. Whether or not somebody put him up to it, that's another thing entirely. And whether he had help with that, and maybe some of that will be in some of these files. But anyway, interesting stuff. People love conspiracy theories, and I'll tell you what else they love. People love injecting mysticism into things. They just love doing that. And I want to make it very clear here that I love science, especially the space sciences. There's something that's just absolutely fascinating about the space sciences. If you haven't read, even if you're not a science fanatic, if you haven't read or done some research or watched some programs about people like Newton and Kepler and all these fine folks, I know everybody mentions Einstein, and he's kind of like the rock star of them all. And I don't get me wrong, I love Einstein. Big fan of Einstein. But Einstein existed at a time where people knew some things. You know, the basic understanding of the world was in place. People like Newton figured out what they figured out when people around them didn't know jack. Okay, and a lot of the formulas and things about gravity that Newton came up with work in space. Escape velocity, all those things, with the astronauts here this last week. The space shot, the famous quote, one of the astronauts said, "We stood on the shoulders of giants to get here." And that's another thing people talk about, how I don't believe we went to the moon. We knew how to get, Newton knew what a man would weigh staying on the moon. The only thing he didn't have was the transportation system to get there. Rocket technology didn't come along until many years later, but he knew what escape velocity was. He knew what all the math was. Totally amazing individual. And in his spare time, he did calculus. You're really missing out if you don't check out into those things. But one thing I'm not too big on, I'm kind of good on, it is archaeology and all that stuff. I think the past is very interesting, and I've certainly delved into it, but that isn't where my passion lies. And when you get into the pyramids, anytime I catch something on TV, or there's a program, or there's an article that comes along, and there's something very interesting about the pyramids, I get sucked into it. And the next thing I know, I'm hearing about aliens, or I'm hearing about something, and it's. I really would like to hear more about the science of the pyramids. And with that being said, I know I cut some grief here a while back when I said that the pyramids were overrated. And I say that because the pyramids are not as big of a mystery as they're made out to be. Okay, I actually have an Egyptologist in my family. We've discussed it. Here again, like I said, I'm a fan of science in general. So over the years, I've looked into this. There's not much of a mystery in terms of how they got them level. Why pi comes up. There's pretty solid theories about how the stones were moved. And you got to keep in mind, the Roman Empire moved some heavy, heavy stones across the Mediterranean Ocean. Okay, so I mean, this isn't rocket science, so to speak. Then when you start to bring in the aliens and all the other stuff, and that's when you start to lose me. And you got to keep in mind too that here again, I'm fascinated by the pyramids. I would like to go. I almost went a few times. But the fact of the matter is that the pyramids are a very neatly stack of stones. That's what they are. In Rome, for example, there's that dome, that cement dome. And some of the secrets about some of the concrete that the Romans used is starting to come to light. Some of they're learning more and more about how they got that concrete to last. But that's a building that's, I don't know, about 2,000 years old, and you can walk inside it. I mean, there you are. You're in this big thing, right? We're not going to have the Super Bowl inside the pyramid. We're not going to have a Lakers game with LeBron James playing in there. All right, it's a pile of rocks. And if I took if I bought a flatbed full of interlocking stone blocks, and then let's say it was 12 feet by 12 feet by 12 feet. I took this giant cube, constructed it out in the middle of the desert somewhere. Do you know what it's going to be 500 years from now? It's still going to be there. It's still going to be a block of cubes. Still going to be a block of stones. It's not going to collapse onto itself. There's very little space inside these things. So I'm not really one of these individuals that it just gets drawn into this mysticism and this aliens and this lost civilization that was so much more advanced. And here again, extraordinary evidence. If it comes along, I'll be happy to check it out. But I'm not sold yet. Nonetheless, I'm going to play this clip for you. There's new evidence that there's structures underneath the main pyramid in Egypt, and it goes under the three of them. And the scans showed 5 identical structures near the base of the Khafre pyramid. These structures contained multiple levels and were connected by geometric pathways. Beneath these pathways, there were 8 vertical cylindrical wells encircled by descending spiral pathways. I'm not going to go on with it because listening to it, just suffice it to say that they're speculating about a lot of complex structures underneath the pyramids. The Reese report said that these discoveries challenge the long-held belief that the pyramids served solely as royal tombs. Researchers have previously speculated that the underground network may have had a mechanical or energy-related function. The idea is similar to theories from well-known people like Nikola Tesla and Christopher Dunn. Most Egyptologists maintain that the pyramids were built around 2500 BC using conventional methods. And these newly uncovered structures, along with the mathematical anomalies around them, have fueled the debate about what these structures were intended to do, other than be some sort of a monument. So anyway, this is a quick idea of what I'm talking about here. And here again, it'll be quick, just to give you an idea of it and not getting into the details. Here we go.
These findings allowed us to construct a 3D model of the entire complex. The examination of dozens of tomographical images obtained from different angles using Capella space and Umbra radars enabled a 3D reconstruction. The analysis of the structures above Belzoni's chamber are intensely coloured spots which can be observed appearing in all tomographic images taken from different angles corresponding to the internal artificial structures.
All right. Now, the Khafre project team has expressed interest in conducting an excavation to investigate this, but obtaining approval for such an operation is very uncertain because Egypt is not normally authorizing digs, and especially ones that challenge official narratives about the pyramids. And that's not because they want to suppress anything. That's because anybody who comes up with some half-baked theory can't be allowed to start digging around these things. They're national treasures. They're portions of human history that are absolutely fascinating. There's not too many places that you can go to and find structures that are 5,000 years old or whatever that were made by human beings and be able to check them out and do all these other things. And there's so many artifacts and precious things around there that are such a vital part of human history that anybody who comes up with some kind of a theory just can't be allowed to go there and start digging. And the other thing is too, some of these illustrations, if you want to do a search and check out some of these illustrations, checking out the scans and then matching them against some of the illustrations that people have created, let me tell you, they've been very liberal in terms of these scans and what they're coming up with what these things were. Some of these illustrations have like underground cities with, all kinds of stuff going on. And I'm surprised if they don't have elevators and all these other kind of things going on. Somewhere buried down there are secrets that the CIA is keeping about the JFK assassination. And like I said, the people's imaginations on this, some of the illustrations are way over the top. You take a look at those scans and then look at what people have interpreted these things to be. detailed things with shopping centers and J.C. Penney and a McDonald's and all that. I'm being coy here, but you get my meaning. Other people have described this as the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening is now upon us because of these columns underneath the pyramids. The Great Awakening is among us. All right, well, we might be waiting a while for this Great Awakening. When it happens, please let me know. And I want to be clear here. This is cool stuff. I really like the real science of it. And I'm anxious to find out what they are able to figure out without destroying the structures of the pyramid, without destroying the site. It would be very interesting to understand what these people did so many thousands of years ago. That part of it alone is fascinating enough. We don't have to bring in any great awakenings. We don't have to bring in any secrets of spirituality. We don't have to bring in any ancient aliens having a little factory down there. We can leave all that out of it. And it can be very fascinating. I promise you, the real science of stuff, which a lot of people are bored with, is a lot more fascinating than what people are conjuring up. So we'll see about what's happening with the pyramids. Like I said, that's something that I have a genuine interest in that. I do find that fascinating. I don't find it as fascinating as outer space, but that's something that's in my wheelhouse. I'll put it that way. Okay. All right. If you, like I said, are new to the program here, if you're watching the stream for the first time, tonight we are on Facebook Live and we are on X Live. The podcast is available on all the major podcast platforms. We are on them all. So if you go to any podcast platform and search Billy Dees Podcast, I will come up. And you can find us on social media. I am on X, the former Twitter, at Billy Dees, and you can find the show on Facebook. Billy Dees Podcasts on Facebook. Got some interesting stuff coming up here in the future here. We're going to have some more people on the program and lots of interesting and intriguing stuff to talk about. I don't claim to have the final word on things, not at all. But I try to express my opinion in a way that might, I don't know if challenge the audience is the right thing to say, but I would say maybe give them something else to consider, another perspective. And I'm a big believer in perspectives. I try very hard to follow the people that I agree with and enjoy, but I also try to follow some people that just push my buttons the wrong way. Okay. And I'm not talking about Jimmy Kimmel. He's way too, can't handle that dude. Stephen Colbert the same way. And by the way, if you are Fox and you're listening to this, we can stop trying to retread Johnny Carson. I got some real good ideas about late night programs. So call me Billy Dees. I got some great alternatives to the tired monologues about Trump being orange. And then we cut to some ridiculous skit. And then we bring on some singer or some actor who wrote a book or is in some kind of a TV show. And, the same old stuff over and over and over again. It's a format that's 80, 70 years old, perfected by Johnny Carson. And it's time for something fresh on late night. So give me a call. Give me a call. We'll do the Billy Dees podcast at 11:30 at night. And we'll go up against Jimmy Kimmel. But seriously, I try to follow people that are in they're in the real world, but they may not, jive with what I feel is one way versus another, but I enjoy that. I think if you stay in a bubble, it's not good for you. I think that you should be able to consider things that challenge your opinion, that challenge your views, seriously challenge them. And I got to tell you, one of the hardest things that any person can do intellectually, it takes a lot of intellectual prowess to do this, just to consider for one moment that we could be wrong. That is sometimes harder than building the pyramids. Hey, I'm Billy Dees. Thank you very much for checking out the program. And we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @BillyDees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.